Hey, face makers, welcome back. Something I promised a while back, I did a video called Pancakes and explained a little bit about the whole process of making a kind of a generic prosthetic that I call a pancake. But I wanted to show you a couple of the molds before we get into that video. This is the like a small version of the mold of my plates. Now you see it's a nice size. It's about 6 by 7. This is great for doing a lot of your small cuts or open wounds and stuff. But what I did was I took a piece of plexiglass, and it was about 1/4 of an inch thick, and I cut a slab of water-based clay, maybe another 1/4 of an inch thick, or I think maybe a 1/2 inch thick. And what I did was I set this perfectly on top of the clay, made sure it was nice and flat and level. I just cleaned around it and then it raised it up, so I had a much higher, thicker piece. That way it'll give me a nice thick edge. And then from that, of course, I stuck some keys on there. These were just round half domes, and I just took a little bit of clay and stuck them on there, cleaned them up, and then I made a silicone mold. So just poured it up, and I can pour up as many of these plates as I want. Boom. Here's another mold. It's an old one. I've had this for about 15 years, so they last. Make them out of platinum silicone. This is a tin-based silicone. Platinum stays stretchy longer, and it's much better. And then here's another one. So there you go. This has kind of like square keys. See those little square pyramid keys. But these are my molds, and I have larger ones for making my big plate that you'll see me working in this next video. The types of pieces that can be made with this process is endless, really. So make sure you hang around till the end of this video, and I'll show you some of the kinds of pieces you can make beyond the neck piece that we're going to get into for this. Okay, so today we're going to make a pattern to a neck prosthetic. Since I'm trying to save time, we're going to use some press and seal. And the purpose of this is to make a pattern over this generic neck so I can make a wraparound neck prosthetic. So I'm going to line this up, put the kind of sticky side down, press it into place, line it up even, wrap it around. And see all those wrinkles there? We're going to deal with that in a minute. Fold this up here. Start slowly working it down. Don't worry about the wrinkles. Kind of wrap it around the back a little bit. Then start taking the wrinkles down. Press it into place as best as you can, so it follows the contour of the neck. This is only for making a pattern. Because when we take this off, we're going to have to lay it out flat and mark it on a sculpting plate. So now what we have to do is put tape on this to hold all the wrinkles into the shape that they're in. Several kinds of tape you can use. This is the packing tape. You want to get the thinnest packing tape you can find. This is really thin stuff. So I'm going to use this for part of it, and then I'll use this packaging gift wrap tape for the rest, because this is very thin. But for a couple of these pieces, I'll use this larger tape. Just to get it down. There we go. Press that into place. What the tape does is holds all the wrinkles into place so they don't unfold and turn into a big flat piece again. So this is a brand new roll of tape. And I like this tape because it's super thin, very transparent, and you can work relatively quickly with it. Just pull off like a bunch of 6-inch strips, make sure there's no wrinkles in it, and start putting it into place. This is how you do a wig pattern too on someone's head using plastic. Don't worry about overlap. You can trim the edges when you're done. It actually kind of helps hold it into position. And I'm going to continue to do the whole thing around the edge. If you have a hard time seeing where the tape is, you can use the that frosted tape. You can see it a little easier. You could even use a colored tape. Any kind of Scotch tape works. You just want to put a coating of tape over the plastic so that it kind of holds its shape. So when you take it off, you can kind of flatten it out onto my flat plate. We'll show you that in a minute. This is the thickest, this is going to be the thickest area of the prosthetic. And I want it to blend up in here to contour around the neck muscles here. If the person has an Adam's apple, it doesn't matter. It's going to be the same thickness. This is basically going to be a prosthetic that's 1/4 of an inch thick in this area, tapering out to thinner and thinner as it goes up to a blending edge. Same here. That way you have the thick area right here. So if you have to put a safety plastic plate underneath it, it won't telegraph through a thin prosthetic. If the prosthetic, let's say, is this thin, and you just have something under it, you're going to see it because it's too thin. So you want to have a thicker piece in the general area where the safety plate is. And you would have a safety plate if you were going to simulate surgery or cutting into the neck, or you're going to show surgery or slice, or say a bullet hole happen, blows out. You want thicker rather than thinner. But you see how this tapers down? This is basically going to be this thick, tapering down to thin as the blending edges comes around. So we're going to kind of find a nice blending edge area right here. Give myself plenty of room. Better to have a larger piece than you need than a piece that's just barely big enough. So I'm just going to indicate some size lines here. Now, if the person has a beard, you got to be cautious of that. I'm reaching around the back just to make sure it wraps around and hides on what I call the off-camera side. You can kind of indicate, maybe some specific lines. If it's being done on a younger person, they don't have a lot of lines in their neck. You'll sculpt those in anyway to just give the illusion of the way the wrinkles and the lines are on the neck. So this is my pattern. And it doesn't look like much, but as I lay it out, you'll see how it works in a minute. Here's my pattern. So we're going to lay this out, figure out where we're going to go with this. It's a little big, so we'll trim the size down a little bit. But this still gives me a little bit of an idea of the shape. And if I did it this way, as you see, it's too far across. So we're going to go at an angle. Here's my keys. I can just about fit this entire thing on there. So this is how we do this. I like to do it with a pencil. I do a pencil because later on when I'm sculpting, if I use alcohol in my sculpture and it hits this stuff, it's just going to run everywhere. So use a pencil. So find your sweet spot for the pattern. Kind of hold it in the middle and then just reach under and kind of sketch. You can correct it later. Just kind of sketch where your marker is. Now when I take this away, I'll look at it and I'll correct my sketch, make sure it's more symmetrical, because you want this as symmetrical as you can get it. Now, you see I've got a nice kind of an oval shape. I'll probably, now I'm going to like fine tune this sketch. If you want to go further down on the neck, I've got a little room here. So what I can do, I can enlarge this a little bit like that. I'm going to need this much room for a blending edge, 1/4 of an inch at least. So you got to leave room to put some flashing there. Okay? Don't go too close to the edge. If you have to cheat it back, you cheat it back. And you kind of look at it, and you want it to be kind of symmetrical, kind of a football shape. And you can fine tune this when you're sculpting too. You may find that as you're sculpting it, you can see how to get it a little more symmetrical. Like, see, this is wider here than this is right here. So I'll just kind of round that off a little bit. Now, instead of going straight, I'm going to give that a little sweep like that. And that's so it'll go up under the chin for a blend. I've got a little leftover piece here. Here's a little cool thing to use for this. So what if I need to put something down and then maybe put a little blender over it and then put this down, because I can see, say I put a piece of plastic underneath this and I'm seeing it. Well, how about I make a little piece here to cover the plastic and then cover it with the big prosthetic. It gives you an option. I've got leftover room here. I might as well make a nice little blending piece. Here's a good piece to use as a pattern. This is a rubber tool for sculpting. That's a perfect pattern for a nice blending piece. So I'm just going to trace around that really nice there so it's perfect. Now, if you want this to be perfect, you can trace half of it on a piece of paper and just flip it over. Here's the bottom. We know the center. We can line this up again. Great, here we go. The center, the thickest area is like right in the middle. Tapering, and this is about 1/4 of an inch thick. At the thickest, it tapers out to nothing. So say you had a wound on somebody's neck that you had created like aftermath, but you needed an appliance to shoot an effect. You can put a piece of plastic over the person's neck. They can hold it for you. You can trace an area on the neck where you need to make a prosthetic. Take your pattern, then transpose that pattern onto a sculpting plate and sculpt everything so it's going to be used on that same person later, and you know where the action is, where it's a bullet hit or a cut throat or whatever. So this is a good way to make quick little prosthetics that are pretty generic and usable on just about anybody. This same appliance could be used like to wrap around an arm for some wound, because it's so big. Say you have a dog bite and it rips through somebody and it's bleeding, you could put the prosthetic on, pull the sleeve down over it, rip the clothing away, exposing the wound. You could run tubes down the arm underneath your prosthetic, and none will be the wiser because your sleeve is covering where the prosthetic would be. If this was all blended onto my arm, you'd see where the prosthetic was. But with the sleeve covering it, covering the edges, and the ripped open area, you created the illusion of actual skin when you're seeing through the window of this fabric. So that's just quick shortcuts. So here we go. This is my sculpting plate. This is it's about a 12 by 12, not quite 12, it's 11 1/4. It's always nice to have a little bit bigger one. I have multiple size plates. I have longer ones, this wide, but this long. I have a much bigger plate like this. I have small plates. So plate molds are great because you can stack them, you can store them standing upright. There's so many ways to use these types of plates, and they're good and heavy duty. This is a Repro. You can use 1630 by BJB. You can use Shell Shock by Reynolds. You could actually do it in Ultra Cow. I want to show you a couple of the molds that I've used with this pancake technique. As I mentioned in the first video, if you need a pancake to cover tubes or some kind of rigging, those are very handy, but also for stacking prosthetics. The next thing you can do with that is you can take your pancakes, sculpt them flat, and you can make some itty bitty pancakes. These are great for doing small wounds that are being sutured on camera. These are all just like smooth blenders with a thick area in the middle, so you could put a wound on someone's arm, have a cut with a little piece of plastic under it for safety, and actually sew it up on camera. I've done that many times. One thing I've done is I'll sculpt my flat area like I'm doing a pancake, then I'll dig into it and turn it into a bunch of really great burns. So you can do all kinds of really cool burns with these. Here's another, oh, there's a really nice big one. This has got a notch in it, so it can actually go on the face and go around the eye. So you got part of the cheek and part of the forehead. Or if you flip it around the other way, it can go on the other side of the face with a longer area here and a shorter area here. So, you know, these things they're really handy and real versatile. So you can do, you know, I've got like, I think 4 different burn plates. And with a combination or every burn from those molds, I can actually do a full face burn overlapping piece on just about anybody because they're multiple pieces. It's like putting together a puzzle. And it's a great test for your painting skills to do something like that. And you can make them in gelatin as well. Even for a makeup test, you could do them in gelatin, and for the final job, you could also do them in silicone. So, but that's the story of the pancake molds and how far you can go with it. Let's get on to our next episode so you can see part 2, sculpting the pancakes.